What to do with a government commitment when costs balloon and you never really liked it in the first place? The answer when it comes to the high-speed 2 rail link and the Johnson premiership was revealed today. A review was announced into the future of the HS2 project, headed by civil engineers. They'll look again at the case for the project, when, as some reports suggest, its estimated price tag of £56 billion could possibly double. But there are many in the Midlands and North who argue it's essential for their future prosperity. Our economics editor Ben Chu took a ride into rail history to look at the future of UK rail.
Good to go?
Or maybe not. The fate of High Speed 2, the planned high-speed train line between London and Birmingham and then on to Manchester and Leeds, hangs once again in the balance after the government confirmed a fresh review of the project and promised a final decision by the end of the year.
Some £4 billion has already been spent by the government in getting ready for HS2. That's money for land and property, consulting and legal services. But common sense tells us that that in itself shouldn't determine whether the project goes ahead. After all, we shouldn't throw good money after bad.
Could the money be better spent on other infrastructure projects, such as improving rail links in the north? What is the fundamental economic case for HS2? When it was originally proposed by Labour in 2009 and given the green light by David Cameron's government in 2012, supporters and ministers told us that the broad economic benefits would outweigh the costs. But there have been questions raised about that calculation. First, the official budget is £56 billion, almost double the initial estimate from 2010. And there have been credible reports that the final cost could come in at £30 billion more than that.
Second, there's the issue of speed. The majority of the projected economic benefits of HS2 were based on the assumption that a new high-speed rail line would enable UK workers to get to their projects more quickly. But many say that doesn't take into account the ability of new technology such as laptops, Wi-Fi and smartphones to enable people to get on with work while they're still on the train.
Yet supporters counter that the central economic benefit of HS2 is less speed than the extra rail capacity the line will create, with the West Coast main line very congested already.
They also say that a conventional cost-benefit analysis doesn't pick up the transformative effects of new infrastructure, the new housing, the new businesses, the invigoration of local economies. Would a cost-benefit analysis have picked up the revolutionary economic impact of the steam engine?
Such a big scheme needs to be looked at in a holistic way. It needs to be put in the context of society as a whole. How will it benefit, whole regions? What will be the environmental effects? What will be the effects on local businesses? Will it enable them to move around the country more easily?
But will HS2 facilitate much-needed UK regional rebalancing?
If you link a very well-off place like London with somewhat less well-off places like Birmingham and Manchester and Leeds, it will be always the well-off place that benefits the most.
There's another factor, less economics than politics. Many civic leaders in the north have been in favour of HS2 because they believe that unless it gets built, a new high-speed rail line in the north linking Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds will also not get built. That HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail are essentially a package.
People across the north of England will now be very wary of what the government is doing with this review, because people here have had promise after promise after promise that the government is going to build us a northern powerhouse, and so far those promises have been about as reliable as our trains.
But is this all political posturing? Some have suggested that the experts appointed to the review panel indicates the project is more likely to be modified than dropped. Polling suggests HS2 isn't very popular, and the insurgent Brexit Party is campaigning to scrap it. Which leaves a question. Could today's announcement be more about short-term electioneering than putting to bed fundamental questions about what infrastructure the UK needs for a prosperous long-term future.
Chu there. Now joining us are Henri Murison, Director of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership from Dundee, and in the studio Penny Gaines, Chair of Stop HS2. That's fairly self-explanatory. If I could start with you, Henri, do you welcome this new review of the project?
I do welcome it, Mark, and I think it reflects the fact that we do need to have a debate based on evidence. And so I think those of us who make the economic case for why we need the transformational benefits that we heard about in Ben's report actually don't have any problem with this review. So if we can make this project more efficiently delivered, if we can ensure that it's delivered on time, and we get the full scheme that we need, which is the full why, so that's going as far as Manchester and as far as Leeds on both sides of the country, then that's the right outcome. And I think that the evidence around the transformational economics, which we're certainly assembling and we'll be bringing together respected experts and leaders to focus that work over the coming weeks, because we know that this is a great opportunity to win the debate, because actually too often we've been on the back foot dealing with critics rather than being able to make a positive case.
Penny Gaines, do you also welcome the review, or only if it kills the thing?
We have been calling for a full, independent, impartial review of HS2, but you really have to question whether the former chair of HS2 Limited could possibly hold that independent review, or whether it's a panel of people, though, with different views. It is a panel, but when you have a panel and a chair, sometimes the chair sort of has a fairly focused view of what the result's going to be, and sometimes it's a less focused view. So we are very concerned that they picked the former chair of HS2 to do the review. But we're also calling for the preparatory works to be halted while the review is going on. You have, as your film showed, there's various things that are going on. Land being dug up. In September, ancient woodland is going to be destroyed for HS2, and that can't be replaced. So while the review is calling on, we're calling for the preparatory works to be stopped.
But in terms of, if that happened, if they listened to your appeal there, Henri Murison, the thing is supposed to deliver its findings in autumn, but we could be in a general election period by then, which I suppose you could say is convenient in terms of saying we can't make a decision before the election. But it might be a good deal longer then before anything can happen again, and indeed there might be a government of a completely different political persuasion.
I mean, I think the reality is that Parliament has passed legislation to enable this project to go forward. So I don't think anyone should be holding back on the works that are happening. I think you also have to take account the fact that there are over 9,000 people working on HS2 currently, many of them at Euston, many of them in Birmingham. They can't just down tools. It's not a practical thing to do. And part of the reason why the review is needing to happen is that many people talk about the savings and how it could be kind of cancelled overnight. The reality is that this has been committed to, and much of it is already out and legally contracted for. And so I think that what we need to be doing is actually thinking in practical and evidence-based terms about how and what we do next to ensure the project delivers. Because I think it is very unlikely that this review would lead to full cancellation. I think that's not the most likely outcome. And I've been very clear today that if there are those who think that this is the kind of a precursor to full cancellation, then I think they're wrong. That is one of the options that could be led to, but a number of the other options are all about improving and ameliorating the way that particularly the scheme is delivered alongside Northern Powerhouse Rail, because as well as it being dependent on Northern Powerhouse Rail and sort of Northern Powerhouse Rail being dependent on HS2, there is a strong argument that the two schemes could be delivered in a more joined up way, which would obviously save money. So our focus is very much on getting those choices right. And I think whenever the general election does come, and I think that many people believe there will be one, that of course any change of government would make HS2 more secure. Jeremy Corbyn is a great supporter of HS2, and I can't see the Scottish Nationalist Party, obviously the party government where I'm sitting here in Scotland, not being supportive of a Jeremy Corbyn government because it wanted to do HS2. Of course, Edinburgh and Glasgow and cities to the north because of the unlocked capacity benefit as well. So I think whatever happens with a change of government, the scheme becomes more secure, not less.
Well, does that potential integration of the project with the line, the Leeds-Manchester and the possible Scotland, does that help, or is that an even bigger problem from your perspective, environmentally, cost-wise, all the other implications?
Well, the thing with Northern Powerhouse Rail is that when transport experts from the north of England came to speak to the Lords Economics Affairs Committee, they said that there were 3 bits of work that Northern Powerhouse Rail needed from HS2. You could cancel HS2 and put the budget for those bits of work, which are quite small bits of work, over into the Northern Powerhouse Rail. So it's not like cancel HS2, then the rest of these other plans all collapse. You can cancel HS2 and still go ahead with Northern Powerhouse Rail, and you have the ability...
And would you want that?
We would want Northern Powerhouse Rail and all these other proposals to be looked at properly. We're not going to say do it, we're not going to say don't do it. They need to be properly looked at, just like HS2 itself needs to be properly looked at.